The hosts feel it would be a little unkind to present this podcast without just a word of friendly warning. We are about to unfold the story of Frankenstein, a man of science who sought to create a man after his own image without reckoning upon God. It is one of the strangest tales ever told. It deals with the two great mysteries of creation, life and death. I think it will thrill you. It may shock you. It might even horrify you. So if any of you feel that you do not care to subject your nerves to such a strain, now's your chance to. Well, we've warned you.
Hello, and welcome once again to the Frankencast. I'm the mad scientist, Anthony Bowman. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm joined as always by...
the scumbag that's flirting with your daughter, that is Eric Velasquez. My pronouns are also he, him. Poor Florian. Not poor Florian. Fuck that guy. He's a fuckboy. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're here with the Golem.
Der Golem.
How he came into the world.
Yes.
And I guess this is the second silent film we've done after like the Edison Frankenstein.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously watching silent films now it's kind of a challenge. It's just, it's different than what we're used to in a way that like, you can appreciate it for its art, but sometimes you can't really like enjoy it. But I was surprised, like I enjoyed this. Like I thought this film had a lot going on. It's fun.
Yeah. I mean, we could obviously say there's some weird anti-Semitic stereotypes for sure. Like the whole idea of the wizard seems to have come from this movie, or at least this idea.
Yeah, it's like I actually I did a bunch of research about like the making of this and like the origins of this particular Golem myth. And
with Judah Ben Lo, the rabbi.
Yeah. So an actual real historical rabbi who apparently a lot of his writings on the Torah are still used today. A lot of the sort of theories he developed are still popular in Jewish teachings now. Like he's very respected, but then, at some point, so I guess he lived in like the,
Prague, the Czech Republic, right?
Yeah. He lived in like the 1500s through pretty much the 1500s. I think he was born in like 1512 and died in the early 1600s. But then I think 100 years after his death, they started like kind of building this mythology around him. I guess we we have that even with like Davy Crockett or something. Like there are Daniel Boone. These are characters that like really existed in American culture, but within a very short window of time, we kind of had already mythologized them into these like larger than life folk heroes.
Yeah. Exactly.
So I thought that I think that's kind of interesting, and like like there are people that believe that like this Golem story, like there's still people searching to try to find the Golem that Rabbi Lowe made. They think it was hidden in an attic, and there's been like searches to try to find it and stuff. So I think that's really cool. And beyond that, like Paul Wegener, who directed this and stars as the Golem, it's interesting. Like I think he heard these myths or these like folk tales. And was fascinated by them, but he's not Jewish. He was a German citizen, and like actually, like it's strange. He was just an artist. He was an actor, a director. He just wanted to make movies. So when the Nazis took over Germany, he was one of the few who was like, well, if the Nazis are going to pay me to make movies, I'm going to keep making movies. And he just like did propaganda films, which is awful, but like he just seemed like a guy who wasn't really concerned with like politics and stuff like that. He just wanted to do the thing he loved.
He was an artist, but of course that group of people likes to exploit art to their own ends. Yeah. So like this particular movie, like you said, it's like there is some like
this
stereotypes mostly.
Yeah, it's not an anti-Jewish film in any way. Like it's, I mean, the Jews are all the heroes in the film, but yeah, it's a lot about Jewish mysticism, Kabbalah, and stuff like that.
Well, one is a secondary villain, but that's just because he's kind of an asshole.
Yeah, like it's, yeah. I mean, it's a diversity of Jewish characters doing different things. It feels like a pretty fair depiction of them for the most part, but it is worth noting that, like, this guy, like, is in a bunch of Nazi propaganda films as well, which is strange.
Well, I think it's basically, I feel like he heard the stories, but also he didn't exactly like live in the culture, right? So he only took what he heard and what he knew Jewish culture to be, and that's what he created as their reality.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's something we see even today. Like
today, yeah.
There are like people who are like, I'm going to tell a story about gay characters, and I'm a
cishet straight person.
Yeah, and like that can be done nobly or like with good intentions and mostly okay, but you're going to make some missteps. Like if you want to, the best person to tell a marginalized story is people within that group.
Right, 100%.
But it isn't to say that you can't do a successful story about a group that you're not a part of if you take it seriously and you do the research and you ask the people who know and ask the right questions and stuff like that. Right. And I think this is kind of on the line. I don't know that he went to a lot of effort to do a lot of research.
Right.
But clearly he cared about this story because the other sort of interesting thing about this story is that he made 3 films about this particular Golem folktale, and
it really stretched out there.
Yeah, and I did a lot of He made one in 1915 called The Golem. Then he made one in 1917 called The Golem and the Dancing Girl. And then this one is from 1918 or 1920. Yeah. And it doesn't seem like it's like a trilogy like we would think of, where it's like, the first part of the story, the middle, and the grand conclusion. It seems like he was just kind of like coming at this story from different angles. Yeah. So it's not like... So the first 2 have been lost to time. But you can watch this third one and not feel like, wait, what's happening? Because it's its own contained story,
Very much so.
But it is wild. Like, I did a bunch of research about the lost ones, and it's weird. Like, some people say that the original one exists, but it's not, like, you can't find it anywhere. Like, supposedly someone has it, but it's not been made available in any way.
Is it in some rich guy's basement? Or vault?
That seems to be in fact, our old friend Donald Glut in one of his books mentions that he thinks a collector in Europe owns a copy of the first one, but it's never been made available. But there are even people who debate that Glut is wrong. So it's weird. Like, in a world that we live in with all this digital, everything is preserved. It's wild to think that, like, not only is this possibly lost, but it might not be, and we don't know. Like, that's even weirder, if it was just like it's gone, that'd be one thing, but this sort of like it may or may not be gone is particularly strange.
Right. It's Schrodinger's film, right?
Exactly.
It both exists and doesn't at the same time.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the middle one, I think, was more of a comedy, and, like, it's pretty much, like, apparently it did poorly at the time and was just pretty much immediately erased from memory. Like, it has been lost from the get-go, and no one seems to really be missing that one as much.
Yeah. But this one is... I appreciate that this is, like, a almost superhero story, right? Like a dark superhero story. The kind of you'd see in the 90s.
Really, like it's complicated. Like there's like heroic moments, and then there are, like, as you said, there's sort of villainous characters who like they're selfish and they have their own motivations, and that, like, complicates the story further. Like it's a pretty like deep story with a lot of layers for something that you would think would be a little bit simple.
Yeah, honestly, this is a very complicated story, especially for the time. Mm-hmm. So,
and to be able to depict it silently and really, make it feel fully fleshed out and everything. Like, There are title cards and stuff as you have with most silent movies, but beyond that, like you don't really have trouble following even the silent moments. Like it's just well put together.
Right. And another thing that I did notice in the film is that a lot of the acting, whereas this is coming off of the only live performance, or the only performances that people have seen have been live performances to large audiences where they have to do large flourishing movements. And obviously if they have speaking parts, they have to broadcast that. They have to make it echo throughout an amphitheater or theater. And this, there are actually a lot of subtle movements and a lot of more drawn in actions that you wouldn't see until later on in cinematic history.
Yeah, and that's also interesting in that this has been sort of reissued several times over the years, and recently had like a 4K remaster, which is the one that's sort of readily available at this point, and there's a lot of subtlety to the facial,
Exactly.
It's they really, like you said, seeing this on a stage from the back row, you're not going to get this nuance, but they're putting that in there,
especially with the Golem actor or the director, his eye movements, his facial movements, there's a lot going on in what he's not saying, which is awesome.
Yeah, and of course, I guess that sort of also works well with the silent stuff, is that the Golem is a silent character anyway.
Yeah.
So everything he's telling, it's through facial features and stuff. It's expressions. It's all very subtle,
Right.
And so that really works in this silent medium in a way that, if it was a character that was more reliant on what he was saying, you're going to have to use a lot more title cards to really get your message across.
It's going to cost a lot more money. We got to cut down on those cards, guys.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into this. So we're going to start off with Rabbi Lowe watching the stars from his wizard's tower, effectively.
Yeah, he's got kind of an observatory sort of thing, but yeah, it feels very Merlin-esque, he's
so.
He's up in a tower looking out this dome roof sort of thing. It's astrological, it's not just astronomy. He's the stars are telling me that there's a threat coming to my people. Right. There's harm, and I it's up to me now that I've seen this warning. I need to try to save my people.
Yeah, we got to gather the elders together and warn everybody, right? Mm-hmm. But then we're going to cut just for a moment to, what was the assistant's name?
Yeah, I don't know that I ever caught his name.
Well, the daughter's name is Miriam, but they're making romantic gestures at each other, saying that maybe a love is blossoming. Maybe not so much. Maybe it's more on his end than hers.
Yeah, find out later. At first, they're kind of together. I interpreted them as a young couple right away, and then as it goes, there are things where it's maybe Miriam's not really into this as much as we thought,
or maybe she's more into somebody else later on.
Yeah. So Rabbi Lowe comes in and he's like, "We need to hurry. There's something's coming. We need to find
Rabbi Jehuda."
Yeah.
I hope I said that right. I think.
Yeah, so. I believe so. Which I don't. As I was looking, I didn't find a real rabbi with this name. Although I think when it comes to Hebrew being translated into English and our letter system and everything, I think Jehuda and Lowe might be historically the same person. I think they're variations of. I think they come from the Lion of Judah, from what I can tell.
Yeah, that would make sense. Judah and Jehuda. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that this may be just kind of him using, or Wegener using a name that he saw in the folk stuff and kind of creating two characters out of one.
Right.
But yeah.
I mean, yeah, Jehuda doesn't do much in this, but.
He really is just someone for Lowe to bounce ideas off of. So it kind of makes sense.
So Lowe dons his robes and wizard hat, kind of literally.
Mm-hmm. And they go to the temple. They gather the elders together to pray for their people. We see like a lot of the Jews of the Prague ghetto gathered in the temple, all praying.
Yeah.
And then we get one of the most like text heavy parts of the movie. We get a full anti-Semitic declaration.
Well, literally, they bring out an iron hand, like an iron gauntlet that's holding this piece of paper. It's like, okay, maybe the director, is on the right side here, because literally they are iron-handedly evicting the Jews from Prague.
Yeah, we end up with Emperor Rudolph II like signing this decree, and basically the decree comes down to like it sounds like Nazi shit, it's like we think the Jews are the cause of all the problems in our area. It's they're the source of all bad, and so what we need to do is exile them from Prague, and that will fix all of our problems. So this decree says, we already have them sequestered in this ghetto, but they have a certain amount of time, I can't remember what, but to like
till
fully vacate Prague. Okay. Yeah. And
because
at that
Ye Olden
point,
Times was vague.
Right, yeah. So at that point, they are fully banned from Prague. And,
Which, that's weird that sounds so modern. Does this happen every 100 years? Like, is this a thing?
It really, yeah. It seems a shame to go from like a silent movie already referencing something that happened hundreds of years before that, and even now it still feels like it's what a world we live in.
Yeah. Either this movie is surprisingly modern, or we're surprisingly not. What's the opposite of modern? Like, not old-fashioned, but sure.
Yeah. We have the rabbi again consulting his charts, and he's like, okay,
But this has a diagram with like, we forgot to say that the emperor basically said, hey, Squire Florian, take this message to the Jewish ghetto and deliver it, please.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yes, going back to Lowe, he's studying his diagram, which the image has a pentagram on the chest, or upside down pentagram. Pentagram. Anyway, there's 5 points on the thing, and it means devil stuff, right, at this point.
Right.
So we're going to summon the demon Astaroth, and we're going to put him in the golem, or use him to create the golem.
He talks about like the dreaded Astaroth, like he is using dark magic for good. Like he does not, he's not like a devil worshiper here or anything. Right. And Astaroth, like, this is one of like the demons that often comes up in horror movies for some reason. I feel like he may come up in Hereditary. He comes up in that movie Antrim. He's like the main demon in Antrim, if you've seen that. Mm-hmm. I think it's like Lucifer, Beelzebub, and then Astaroth is like the third tier.
He's like a middle manager.
Yeah.
This is also kind of in relation to Goetic, like the Goetic mythology, where Solomon, the Lesser Keys of Solomon, where Solomon was so wise he could actually command demonic legions, but he was not demonic himself.
Yeah. And it seems like Astaroth is the keeper of the word that you need to bring a golem to life, and so that's why we have to.
Is, in mythology, it's Emmet, but in this, it's like Amit.
Yeah, because I think is Emmet means life, truth, and then truth. The whole thing is that with a golem, you put that on his forehead or sometimes in his mouth. In this case, it's in his chest. But then you can erase the first letter, and that turns the word to death.
Yeah, met means death.
Yeah. So yeah, like Lowe is like, it's time to call forth Astaroth to start the process, because we gotta have this golem. And then at that point we go and we see Florian arriving at the ghetto. He's got the edict.
Right. Also, he has a flower. He's a very foppish lad. Mm-hmm. He's like, here's the edict, by the way. But we also get Miriam, who's like, she's like the beatific idea of a young woman, where she's just like smiling beautifully, doing her long, lustrous hair in the sunlight,
Yeah. Yeah, like Lo is working hard in the wizard tower, and she's just brushing her hair, looking out the window.
Innocence and beauty and all that good stuff, right?
Mm-hmm. And so we see Lo leave his tower and go into like a lab, and this is, I mean, pretty Frankenstein-y. Like there's not electrical stuff, obviously, where
this is magical science.
Yeah, and we have the clay golem like standing up in the corner, very much like we would see an unrevived Frankenstein monster.
Right. This is the unfinished golem. Just a
and it's pretty cool because it's a I think it's a dummy at this point. It's shaped like a man, but the face is just like a mess of clay. There's no face yet. Mm-hmm. And Lo is like carving at it, like trying to turn it into a man. But then we see the Florian being taken first to Jehuda, where he shows him the edict, and Jehuda's like, we need to take this to Rabbi Lo. We need, we've got to gather the council together, basically. All the important rabbis. We got to talk about this and see what we're going to do.
Yeah. So on the way there, though, Miriam's hanging her head out the window, as you do in these old timey movies, and she's watching Florian, and she's like, "Yo, boy, what up?"
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's into him right away. So Florian comes inside and shows the edict to Lo, and Lo's like, I thought we were on good. I have given the Emperor star charts. I've helped him many times in the past. I thought we were on good terms.
Why is he kicking us out?
Yeah, I must speak to him at once. I think I can clear this all up.
Meanwhile, Miriam's like, "Hey, I brought you and your new friend, who I'd like to get to know, some refreshments. Maybe we can both have a drink." And she sips and hands it over to him.
Yeah,
it's very flirty.
Yes, and so that ends chapter 1. So this is divided into chapters. Mm-hmm. So chapter 2 starts with Lo finishing the golem. He's got the face is all shaped now and everything.
Yeah. Now he's going to begin the incantation. Now, so how much do you know about? I'm assuming you know a lot about the golem legend and how it ends.
From what I had seen about like this specific one, there's a few different variations on how it ends, but mostly the golem kind of like breaks free and becomes like a danger. Seems to be like the main way the story ends. Is
right.
Like
now a lot of times,
golems.
like we were saying a moment ago, when you erase the E, the golem will basically just fall over because it's dead. Mm-hmm. Well, in one of the endings, Ben Lo, or Rabbi Lo, says, "Okay, I'm done with this thing. It's causing too much trouble. I'm going to erase the E and kill it effectively." But that's when the golem falls over on him and crushes him in a lot of the stories, or in a few of them. But the golem actually almost falls over on Rabbi Lo here, but he does manage to push it back. And I wonder if it's a nod to that, or if maybe that inspired some of the other versions, things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Lo ends up bringing in his assistant to like help. Mm-hmm. I think he's like, "Can you keep a secret? Like this is very needs to we don't want a lot of people to yeah." And so they start working, and then I think Florian arrives again to say, the Emperor said he'll see you, but he also takes some time to flirt with Miriam again as well.
Right. Well, as the assistant and Rabbi Lo are leaving, he's like, "Hey, let's grope a little bit about it."
Yeah.
And I mean, for a 1920s movie, he's like groping her, like on screen.
It's interesting, like especially because when we think of like old movies, we're often specifically thinking about movies made in America during the Hays Code, where like there was a lot that could not be said or shown on screen, but like this movie has a lot. I mean, there's not like nudity in it or anything, but like there's some controversial stuff that happens in this that we definitely would not have seen in a movie from like the 1930s in America.
Right. Could you imagine if this was released in America? There would have been such an uproar over the sexual content. It's like, it's groping, and that's not anything like huge to us, but like for this time in America during like right before Prohibition, they would have lost their mind.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Before Lo goes to see the Emperor, he and his assistant move the golem into another room where they're going to like do the life-giving ritual or whatever. But they see that the emperor has like brought or sent a bunch of men to collect Lo. They're like all outside. So he confronts his daughter. He's like, I see what's going on with you and the emperor's
he starts choking her for a moment. And he's like, I tell you what, you're going to have a protector or guardian so this doesn't happen again. We're not going to let that happen one more time.
Yeah, like it there's a little bit of him being like, I know you're up to no good, but it's also the whole like dads protecting their daughters from the men that are the problem. So he's like, I'll keep you safe. You know, I know you can be tempted or whatever, but like I know it's really Florian's fault.
Yeah, you have no agency. Psh, it was that Florian being the instigator all along.
Yeah. And yeah, like she kind of like tries to argue with him a little bit, but like, you know, he's not going to hear it. So
no, you don't argue with Rabbi Lo.
Yeah,
or maybe you do. I don't know who. I don't know your life.
So then we go back to Lo in his little study, and he has his like tome of Jewish mysticism, and this thing is a fucking tome. It's like 4 phone books thick. It is huge, and like he's specifically reading about the Shem, the name, which like the Shem is one of the Jewish phrases that they use to describe God. You know, which you know, again, like, you know, names, like the power of a name is such like a big thing in a lot of sort of, you know, folklores and you know, religious things throughout human history.
If you know the true name of something, you control it, or you can interact with it.
But like in you know, a lot of Hebrew writings, they won't, you know, they don't say God, they won't say Jehovah,
like they don't say the true name of God.
And so they will just call God the name Shem. So you know, but here he's looking at like the name to give the golem. This is like you were saying with like the Key of Solomon. Like he's like, this is how Astaroth is able to bring the dead to life, or lifeless clay, and which yeah, I think, you know, like I don't like the sort of golem myths, I think, are sort of come from like the original creation story, right? Like,
yeah,
you know, Adam was made of mud, and God said, you know, breathed life into him, and he became a man. And so I think the idea is like, we're, you know, again, Victor Frankenstein, like I know what it is like to be God. I think it's interesting that like within these sort of Jewish stories that it's like, obviously we're not going to make a man, you know, Victor Frankenstein, he's going to make a man. But these rabbis are like, this is a golem. It's an unformed partial life because we're not God. We can use what God did and try to kind of in a lesser way recreate it. And it won't be at his level, but it'll be something that we can use, you know.
A rough approximation.
So, you know, it doesn't have the full extent of like the presumption of Victor Frankenstein. This rabbi does not want to know what it's like to be God, but he wants to create a lesser being that he can use.
In the manner of God.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think that's really interesting. It's a sort of a different way to approach the sort of Frankenstein myth.
Exactly. This is the proto-Frankenstein.
Yeah. I mean, obviously this predates it quite a bit.
Everything's there.
It's a lot of the same stuff. And then if you take this story at face value, and if like, you know, you believe that this actually happened, that this real Rabbi Lo really did make a golem, then the next step would be, how do we make something better than a golem? How do we make something more human than a golem? Of course, we're going to have to, you know, escalate. That's what people do.
Exactly.
So we don't want a walking clay man. We want flesh and blood. We want a beating heart. We want a soul.
And that's what has led us to the, let's make something better than a man. Let's make something out of metal that lasts forever and does, you know, maybe stainless steel that doesn't tarnish.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. So when Lo does this thing, like we get this really cool scene. Like, well, first, you know, he makes the star, the pentagram for the golem's chest. But he puts on this like magician's helmet thing,
Right.
and he makes a flaming portal around him on the floor.
Don't forget the wand. He has the wand.
Yeah, but like this is, you know, one thing that I do continue to find fascinating about, you know, really old films is sometimes you will see a thing and you're like, they didn't have CGI. They didn't have anything even remotely approximating what we have now, and this still looks good. And to think like, what did they do to make this? So like, I did look this. So it's like he makes a circle around himself, and like light is coming up through it, and smoke is coming up, and it's just like this glowing, you know, haze around him and everything that just looks fantastic. I think they genuinely just like had you know, vents in the floor and were pushing smoke up through and light, but it looks good.
I think it was honestly they created like a gas burner effectively around this guy, because I'm pretty sure you could see flames as well. So yeah, they had that going.
Yeah, and while that's all going on, also there's like spirits floating around him that I think were like superimposed after the fact. This reminded me of like Georges Méliès stuff. He did a lot of like, you know, ghostly things superimposed over footage. But all this happening at once, like it's overwhelming, and it looks really, really cool. Right.
It's terrifying to a degree, right? If you saw this at least roughly in real life, you'd be like, okay, that's something. But then let's get the man himself. Let's get Astaroth, aka the head on a swivel. It almost looks like an alien head. But,
it's this distorted sort of demonic face. I think it's like, you know, it's not a person, like it's some sort of creation that they've done, and it like moves out of the darkness. It's breathing smoke. Lightning is striking. Like again, this is really, really impressive looking.
Right. But he basically says, "Hey, the word emet will bring the golem to life, your creation to life."
And like the Lowe's assistant like faints just at the, you know, the terrible sight.
Right. As you do.
And then we just see like a little later, Lowe is waking the assistant up, and he's like, "All right, I've got the word.
I've got the pendant that the demon gave me."
Yeah. So he like writes it, you know, on paper, folds it up, puts it inside that star, and attaches it to the golem's chest. And the golem wakes up immediately.
Right, but when he does, we can tell something's already a little bit off, because he kind of starts stomping around, but pushes the assistant down, shoves him out of the way.
Yeah, he's not, you know, fully docile right away. Like you can tell, you're gonna have to be careful with this thing. It is not. It's not gonna be easily controlled.
Right. As a matter of fact, Ben Lowe, or Rabbi Lowe, says, "All right, we're done," and takes the pendant off almost immediately.
And once the golem is inert again, they're like, "We did! Holy shit, we did!" Like they kind of get the "it's alive" moment when it's not actually alive anymore, because they're just like, "Okay, we did it. We'll put it back on later." But like, wow, it worked! It worked! We did it!
Right. I mean, that seems like something you would do in like testing, or you know, whenever you're creating a robot or something modern, right? It's like, all right, we ran the test, we're excited by the test, then we shut the test off. It's like, holy shit, it worked.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it feels a little more science. You know, of course, when Frankenstein makes his monster, it's just cut loose. It's there. But this feels a little bit more measured and scientific. Like, okay,
which is funny because it's magical. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. But we have our initial test. It was a success. Okay, let's regroup. Let's think about how we want to proceed with the next attempt. That's the end of chapter 2. Chapter 3 has like a subtitle that comes up. I think it's the only one that has like a name like that, and it just says "A Strange Servant."
Right.
Which leads to the golem, who is now seems to be a little bit more under control. He's just outside chopping wood.
Right. What do you do to your obviously a little morally loose creation? You hand him an axe. That's what you do.
Right.
Nothing bad could happen.
Yeah. Which I thought it was interesting. Like, you know, theoretically here the idea is like this thing's being created as like the protector of the Jewish people. He's going to prevent the pogroms. He's going to protect us from being, exiled from Prague. But also, he's a domestic servant. He's also good for chopping wood. He's good for any sort of manual labor we need him for.
I mean, to be fair, if he can do it, let him do it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But he also likes to draw water, which is another thing. Or he does it. I don't know if he likes it. But he does pull up some water from a well for him.
Yeah, and Lo is pointing him out to Miriam, and he's like, "See, I told you were going to have a new protector. This is my new servant." He does not say, "This is my creation. This is my clay golem."
Right, because he's a normal guy. He just looks like dirt, literally.
Yeah. The design on the golem, I guess we didn't really talk about.
No, we didn't.
He's kind of painted brown, which works really well because when he's the inert clay figure, it is a dummy, and then when it is, alive, it's the actor Paul Wegener. But they do a good job of switching back and forth between the two, where sometimes you can't quite tell, is this the dummy or the real guy?
Right.
Because he has his hair is sort of helmet shaped. It's very stiff, not lifelike.
It's like a Page Boy haircut, right? But it's literally like they sat a rock on his head instead.
Yeah. So it's interesting that they're not trying to make him not look like a clay guy. He not lifelike. But somehow, he's still telling Miriam that he's a servant. And I think then we see the golem.
He goes on a shopping trip.
Yeah, Lo sends his assistant and the golem together. The golem stomps through the city, and you see he's kind of overwhelmed at this hustling, bustling town. He's never seen all these people before, of course. But the people are also
to watch him.
Yeah, kids are really awestruck. The adults are who is this giant man stomping through our town? So everybody's a little overwhelmed by this whole situation. And when they get to the little shop, the assistant is "This is Rabbi Lo's new servant. He's mute. But he, if you see him, he carries with him all the weight of Rabbi Lo. He'll give you a list of things, give him whatever he asks for, because he's been sent by us. He's kind of doing the introductions here. Moving forward, he may show up by himself, but that Rabbi Lo has sent him.
Yeah, so then we're going to cut to Florian outside of the ghetto's gates, and he's paying off the gatekeeper. He's like, "Hey, buddy, I'm going to need you to pass this message on for me."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so we do see Miriam get the note. We don't see what it says, but she's very excited about it. Mm-hmm. We get another title card, "The Festival of Roses." And this
is after the assistant tries to teach the golem how to do the bellows and almost burns the house down.
Yeah, that bit's really good. The golem is obviously super strong, so the assistant is trying to get him to do some of his tasks, but the golem pumps the bellows too hard, and it's a moment of comedy in this movie that is mostly pretty serious.
Yeah.
He blows dust all over the place and everything, or the fire gets too big. Is that
the fire almost goes out of control because he's pumping it so hard.
Mm-hmm.
And Ben Lowe's all right, we gotta stop that one. He pulls the pennant off. And he's like, "Hey, assistant, I've got to go speak to the emperor. So you own the house now, effectively."
Yeah. So we go to the Rose Festival, which again, this is a real thing. I believe it still goes on to this day in Prague. It's their sort of annual festival, and my understanding is a lot of what you see in this is just Wegener recreating what this festival is actually like. You've got. Right. People celebrating. It's obviously a lot of wealthy people. This is not where the Jews are. They're over in the ghetto. This is the Christians of Prague. And in the midst of it all, we see Florian there, and he sneaks out. He's like, "This is my chance. Everybody's focused on the festival. No one's gonna miss me." I think that we actually do get to see the note at that point that
Miriam's reading it.
Yeah, he's basically telling her what's happening. While the festival's going on, I'm going to escape. Your dad will be gone. We'll have some time to ourselves.
Yeah, things can happen here,
Yeah. And at that point, we see Lo and the Golem arriving at the festival, and everyone at the festival's like shocked. And, you know, like so far the Golem's only been wandering around the Jewish ghetto. Now we're getting the rest of Prague seeing him for the first time.
Well, it's like the knights of the court are like, no, you don't get to go any further, or the guards in their full armor.
But Lo is like, you know, the emperor asked for me. I'm expected. So he is let through the crowd. He meets the emperor. Lo is like, this is my creation. I made this. He's my servant. But I built him out of clay. And I think the crowd goes from like, oh, this is a really intimidating, strange looking man, to being like, oh, this is cool. Like, wow, what an impressive feat. You know, they're less scared. They're more intrigued.
Right. Well, I'm assuming this is the queen because she has a crown. She starts rubbing up on the golem pretty suggestively.
She gives him a flower. This reminds me of stuff we've seen in Frankenstein films. Like this, as we were talking about at the beginning, this is where you get like some like face work from Paul Wegener here, where like he looks genuinely touched. You know, even under all the makeup and the brown paint and everything, like you get expressions from him that like this monstrous figure is experiencing humanity in a way that he never has up to this point. And you know, but while that's going on, the emperor's like, you know, I want to see more tricks. Okay, magician, do more fun things for me, impress me.
Right. And of course, Rabbi Lo is like, well, tell you what, I'll show you something, but you gotta promise no one speaks, no one laughs. If they do, bad things are gonna happen. Because sense.
I'm gonna have to like call upon my Jewish ancestors, and like, you know, like this is the magician stuff, you know. But he it's one of those things where he's like, what I'm going to do is not something that I usually would just do as like a show. This is important, deep magic that is usually only to be used for something important. But because you're the
and things like that.
Yeah, I think, you know, Lo is justifying this as like, this might save my people. So in effect, it is being used in an important way, but at the same time, it's being used as a triviality to impress an emperor. So it's a little bit of both here, you know.
Right, something that like if you weren't in the culture, you wouldn't understand is very important. So to you, it's just a show.
Exactly, yeah. We cut from that back to Florian arriving at the house, and this is where Florian and Miriam are, you know, you can tell things are escalating here. I think, like, we never get, like, a sex scene. We get, like, the lead up to what we can assume is going to happen, and then I think in a little bit here
post-coitus,
we'll get, like, yeah. So we get them just kind of, like, reconnecting, and then we cut back to the festival where now Lo is using his magic.
He's showing them the Exodus, it looks like.
Yeah, this whole scene was really strange to me because it's like, yeah, it starts, you have like, you know, he's like projecting the history of the Jewish people on the wall to everyone's amazement. And yeah, you got people walking through the desert. You have this central figure that like seems like Moses. You know, he's got his walking staff. He looks very important and powerful.
But it's unfortunately part of a very... Like, the character looks very impressive, and, you know, I don't think this was meant to slight them, but it does use a pretty awful stereotype of the wandering individual Jewish heritage.
Lo refers to this character that we see as Ahasuerus, who is, as you said, is this sort of mythical, the wandering Jew figure that, like, is a really complicated figure in mythology, in that like he's not really part of Jewish folklore. I think this is definitely where Paul Wegener is like mixing some stories here together, because as far as my understanding, this Ahasuerus character is like, he is forced to wander the earth as a punishment for the Jews' responsibility in Christ's execution. You know, this is sort of the beginning of like Christian anti-Semitism.
And I guess the jester of the court makes a joke to the queen at this point. Probably something we don't want to know, which is good that they left it out. But it does cause everyone in the crowd to laugh, which Not supposed to do that right now. This is not the thing you're supposed to do. As a matter of fact, Ahasuerus seems to take offense to their laughing. And he almost charges at them from this vision.
And then there's suddenly like kind of like a big explosion. It's like, it's almost, this being like a movie from 1920, like this is the time when like I think the whole projection thing here is sort of echoing movies, like this film is set in a time way predating film. So of course it would be unbelievable to those people. But even in the 1920s, people are still, this is only a few years removed from like the train film that like sent people running from theaters thinking they were going to get hit by a train. So here we have this figure being projected on a wall, running to attack the people in the room, and it actually sort of does happen. There's an explosion in real life, and the walls of the room where they are start to kind of like crumble, and the ceiling is collapsing and everything. Right,
and as a matter of fact, they're like, either they're bringing the stage up or lowering it down, but it looks like it's falling on everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, this is some like pretty impressive special effects for the time.
Yeah. And the Emperor's like, hey, Rabbi Lowe, if you could save me, I promise to pardon your people.
Yeah, so, this is not exactly the way Lowe expected this to go, but he's kind of getting the result he wanted here. He's finding a way to convince the Emperor to not persecute his people anymore.
Listen, sometimes you got to break into a guy's house and blow it up before he starts listening to you, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, this is, sometimes violence is the answer, unfortunately, as we still are, seeing today over and over again, Yeah,
humans suck. I mean...
Yeah. And so, Lowe puts the golem to it, and the golem is able to hold up the ceiling, allowing the Emperor and his court to all escape. And, again, I think Wegener does an interesting job, I'll say, of like kind of mixing various bits of Jewish legend and stories from the Old Testament and everything, because this kind of felt like the opposite of like the Samson and Delilah story.
Instead of trying to kill everyone, it's trying to save everyone.
Yeah, and it also to me looks a lot like what we see in a lot of Frankenstein films. That one scene that got reused in a couple of the Universal films of
the pillar falls down.
Yeah, crushes the Lugosi Frankenstein monster, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah, so I like there's just a lot going on in here that I was like, this feels very familiar in a lot of ways that point to things that have previously happened and things that haven't yet happened, that probably maybe are referring to this.
Yep.
And so, yeah, of course, that's how that chapter ends, with the golem saving the Emperor.
Yeah, so as we start the fourth chapter, we get Miriam in bed with Florian, so things have happened.
Yeah, we see the rabbi and the golem walking home on the road, sort of like silhouetted by the sunset. And yeah, Florian and Miriam are in bed together. And so there's a lot of tension here, because we know Lowe is headed home, and we know what's going on at his house right now. The tension works because like Lowe arrives at the gates, and he's like, "I have news from the Emperor. I have great news." So it's like
bust out the shofar, play that bad boy.
Yeah, so he gets like stopped on the way, so that like we're like, oh, are they going to be able to get away with this? Is Miriam going to be safe? But eventually, he does arrive home, and it's one of those things where like he's coming in the door. Miriam and Florian are removed enough from the front door to like hear it and be like, she's like, hide, you gotta, if my dad sees you, we're in trouble.
Right. But then we get a real tense moment where like Judah's like, all right, Gollum, you've done what you're supposed to do. The pendant's coming off. The Gollum's like, nah, I'm keeping this on. I'm staying alive, buddy. You're not taking me out like that.
Yeah. There's definitely this sense of like the Gollum understands now. He likes being alive. He wants to keep being alive. He doesn't want to give up his life. And
he almost smacks or crushes Rabbi Lowe. Sorry.
Yeah, and I think that this happening simultaneously with the Miriam stuff is, I think it's an intentional parallel here, where like you've got the two creations of Rabbi Lowe, basically, who both are enjoying life more than Lowe would like them to.
Right.
They're both
maybe
sort
like
of rebelling.
They were eating a forbidden fruit, right?
Yeah, exactly. Again, not to like. I think Wegener is really he's thinking about this kind of stuff, and he's maybe not getting everything right, but I think he's trying to kind of like look at these complicated ideas in interesting ways. I found this to be really compelling. This section here, I think, is probably one of my favorites, just because there's so many. Yeah. So yeah, the golem manages to kind of like fight off Lo for a little while, but eventually he's able to get the star off of his chest, and the golem freezes back into clay.
Lo's hands are too fast. He's like Tyson. No, anyway. But yeah, so now it's time for. He actually is like, okay, it's time to end this, because he looks through his book and it's like basically the fine print saying, hey. If you let this creature live for too long, Astaroth is going to influence it to effectively destroy you or turn all of your good works to ill.
Yeah.
It's like making a deal with a demon, just it isn't in your favor, really.
Right. Yeah. So while Lo is reading this, the assistant comes back in and he's like, Jehuda has put together a big celebration to thank you for what you've done, and just we all want to celebrate the fact that we're safe and everything is good here in the ghetto again. As they're kind of like gathering things together to head to the temple, Miriam's like, "All right, this is our chance. As soon as they leave the house, you'll be able to escape." Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the assistant's like, "Oh, hey, we forgot to tell Miriam it's time to go celebrate."
Yeah. So we have Lo being paraded through the streets by the crowds as the assistant rushes back inside, and he's like knocking on Miriam's bedroom door, like, "Hey, everybody's safe. We're all happy. Your dad's being, honored. You should come out and be present for this."
Right. And she's like, "Wait a minute. I'll go after the party. It'll be fine."
Yeah, I'll catch up with you guys later for sure.
But the assistant's pushy.
Yeah, and so she's like, "No, I promise, I'll be out in a little bit. Just go on without me. I'll be there soon." And he just stays outside the door quietly, and then he hears inside the door Miriam talking to Florian, and he's like, "Wait, what's going on?" Like,
right.
As
he realizes, "Oh shit, it's that dude from earlier."
Yeah, as we mentioned, the assistant thinks he has a relationship with Miriam, whether or not she's having an affair or she is just having a relationship that's not the one that her father is expecting of her.
Right.
It's not, that part's not fully spelled out. But certainly the assistant feels that he is being betrayed in this moment.
Yeah, of course. And what are you going to do when you're a little shit who feels like you've been betrayed? Well, you're going to go reactivate that golem and tell him to do your dirty work.
Yep. So he puts the star back on and he's like, "There's an intruder in Miriam's room. She's in danger. You should go protect her." Right.
Well, he's like more like, "You should chase him away." Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. I mean, the golem's going to listen to the word of that you say versus the spirit of it.
Mm-hmm. So he breaks down Miriam's door. Florian rushes at him with a dagger, but, the golem is clay. A dagger doesn't do anything to him.
Not much. It gets blunted. That's what it does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he's just kind of throwing Florian around. Miriam tries to protect Florian. He throws Miriam to the ground.
Uh-oh. That wasn't what we were trying to do. We just wanted to chase the one guy off.
Yeah. So we have the golem chasing after Florian, while the assistant rushes in to check on Miriam, but again he sucks. So this I'm not fully sure what's happening here, but it seems like an assault is about to occur. Like it seems like he's going to force her into something she doesn't want to do, but she manages to kind of resist and get away.
But he's still chasing her. He's not going to give up that easy.
Yeah, so we have this sort of like 4-person chase here where like Florian's in the lead being chased by the golem, Miriam's chasing after to protect Florian, and then the assistant's in the back. Yeah. It all ends up on the roof of the tower where the golem finally catches up to Florian, picks him up, and throws him to his death.
Yep, there's only one way for Florian to go, and that's straight down. Now, of course, both the assistant and Miriam see that, and they're like, oh, this is like, I fucked up. I fucked up real bad. I just wanted the guy gone. I didn't want him dead.
Yeah, murder, that could be a problem. And this isn't just some stray guy. This is like the Emperor's, herald, basically. Like,
right.
He's going to be missed, and that could be a problem.
Yeah. But the Golem actually does something that's kind of different, though. It's almost like he takes on the desires of his master, because he then grabs Miriam and drags her downstairs, and it's almost like he's going to assault her.
Mm-hmm. He carries her down, lays her on like the table, I think, where he was previously laying.
And he looks at her lovingly.
Mm-hmm. But the assistant rushes in, and and Miriam has fainted, from seeing Florian killed. So she starts to wake up, and that distraction allows the assistant to pull the star off of the Golem again.
Well, he tries to, but doesn't the Golem swat him away and then grab the flaming brand?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, the assistant is not as quick as Lo.
No.
So yeah, in the chaos, the Golem sets the house on fire.
Right.
And so that's the ending of that chapter is like the Golem standing there, powerful, monstrous, with this burning building around him. Again, very evocative of a lot of moments we've seen in Frankenstein films.
Oh yeah. But what happens when you put one place that's really flammable next to a bunch of other places that are really flammable?
Yeah, who would have thought that the Jewish ghetto would not be well constructed?
Yeah, mainly by the people who put them there, but still, yeah.
Right, yeah. So we get to chapter 5, the final chapter. We've got all the Jews in the temple still celebrating, but the assistant rushes in and he's like, Rabbi Lo, the town, the ghetto's on fire.
I had nothing to do with this. This is not my fault in the least.
He says, the Golem rages. Right. And so, of course, the crowd panics. They all run out of the temple. They're running through the streets as everything's burning around them.
Yeah.
And then we see elsewhere, the Golem is just stomping through the streets alone. And he's like dragging Miriam by her hair.
Right. The actual actress, by the way, because you could see her like move her hands and try to steady herself. So that couldn't have been comfortable.
Yeah, there must be some kind of harness system they're doing here. But Paul Wegener is just physically dragging a woman around.
No, I have a feeling that's actually him trying to pull her by her real hair, because later we're going to see the dummy that they switched to.
Oh, okay.
Because she was probably like, this ain't going to work for me, bud.
Yeah, it could be. And eventually some of the people in the crowd, they're just kind of running chaotically, but some of them come upon the Golem and see him, and they see him dragging Miriam, and they're like, Rabbi Lo, the monster is kidnapping your daughter.
But also, we're all going to die if this fire keeps spreading.
Yeah, you need to stop him. You need to stop the fire. You need to save your daughter, and you need to save us. So they're just really begging for help here. Of course, Rabbi Lo, this is what he does. He's like, all right. He walks straight into the fires, into the smoke, following after the Golem and his daughter, and is like doing his magician thing. He's chanting, he's waving his hands around. He seems very competent, like he knows what the solution here.
Exactly how to exercise the fire, I guess.
And but then the Golem, as he gets away from the fires, he drops Miriam to the ground, and it becomes clear, like, he wasn't trying to take her away. He was trying to take her away from the fire. He saved Miriam from the fires.
Interesting. So there is some good in him.
Yeah, he just once she's to safety, he just drops her and walks off. So Lo finds her as she's waking up, and he's overjoyed. My daughter is safe. She's not been harmed in the fire. And at this point, whatever he has done has kind of calmed the fires down. Things seem to be going back to normal.
Right. Everyone's like, hey, Rabbi Lo saved us a third time today.
Yeah. And so at that point, the assistant rushes in, and he's like, the people want to celebrate you again. You have saved us again. The celebration's going to continue. Let's all go back to the temple.
Right. But of course, the assistant's going to be a little shithead and he's going to sit next to Miriam. He's like, yeah, so I'm not going to tell your dad what happened between you and that Florian guy because I feel bad about it.
Yeah, he's basically like, yeah, we can both we haven't been our best selves today.
Secrets.
But
Yeah, right.
Yeah. You had a little affair. I brought a monster back to life and almost raped you. But mistakes were made on both sides here. So let's just we'll keep it between us.
We're both culpable.
Yeah, and he's like, and also, with all the fire, Florian's body has just been burned up, so we don't have to talk about that. We can just say,
so really, no harm, no foul.
Yeah, who knows what happened to him? He's just mysteriously vanished in the fires. And then we see the golem at the gates of the ghetto pounding on it. He wants out. He wants into the city of Prague. Outside the gates...
Bunch of kids.
Yeah, a bunch of non-Jewish kids. They're just dancing and singing. And the golem breaks through the gate and walks up to these innocent children. And, again, this feels like the Maria scene. Like, he's just walking up to these kids, and it's like, what's going to happen here? Are these kids dead? And
I honestly thought he was going to drop the gate on them. Because they're all, suspiciously under the gate.
And the gate is huge. No. It has this massive bar that, requires this whole pulley system to move it out of the way. It's very imposing. But then one little girl comes up to the golem and hands him a piece of fruit. And
that's the way to a golem's heart.
Yeah, again, we see the humanity on his face in this moment. And he's just holding it, looking touched. And the girl looks up at him.
Picks up the kid.
Yeah. And he's holding her and looking at her, and she sees this interesting star on his chest and wonders, what's that? So she...
What do kids do when they see something interesting? They grab it.
Yeah, she grabs it, pulls it off his chest. He immediately turns to clay, and the clay version of the golem is not strong enough to hold this kid anymore. His arms just collapse by their sides. She falls to the ground.
He falls backwards.
Mm-hmm. Rather than crushing her here, he just falls, harmlessly to the ground. And we have all the kids kind of wander away. The girl carries...
Well, they sit on him. They sit on the golem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they bring some other kids back. They're like, look at this. This was a guy a minute ago, and now it's just clay. But eventually they're like, okay, yeah, it's just clay. It's not interesting anymore. So they all wander off. The girl carries the star with her for a little bit and then just kind of throws it in the bushes because it doesn't mean anything to her.
Right.
Meanwhile, in the ghetto, the Jews are all looking for the lost golem. Eventually, they make their way to the torn down gate.
Right. They're like, oh, the golem did this. Okay.
Yeah, but then they step outside and they see that the golem is lifeless. It's inert. The star is gone, and they're like, oh, thank God. Once again, we have been saved. We've been saved many times over today.
Right. Let's get that golem in here, though. Bring him in. Bring him back to the ghetto.
Yeah, so they lift him up and carry him back inside. And then we have the Star of David superimposed over the scene as we go to credits.
Almost like you would expect a flag there, or American flag or something, right?
Yeah, the Jewish people are victorious once again. Again, as we said, there are some Jewish stereotypes in here, but overall, it feels like Wegener feels positive about the Jews. This is not an anti-Semitic film. There are some moments that skirt the line because you have a guy who doesn't necessarily know everything about this culture, and he's doing his best.
Right.
But overall, I think he is the story is positive in his mind. That these people, they rose up, they found a way to protect themselves, and he finds it inspiring.
Right. Absolutely. Maybe it's almost even a way for him at the time to maybe even protect them, being like, no, they're good people. Yeah. I don't know, but it seems that way.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's definitely the way I interpret it. And, again, like we said, he's obviously a mixed bag as far as stuff goes, with him having been involved with...
Taking Nazi money?
Yeah. But he seems like the kind of guy who's just I'm here to tell a good story. I don't care about anything beyond that. If I find the story compelling, and obviously he found this one compelling, telling it 3 times over. So, I mean, it's hard to fully endorse a guy who's like, yeah, whatever, I'll take Nazi money, I'll be in some propaganda films. But at least in this case, he made this film that this is definitely the film he's most known for. This is his legacy, and I think overall it's something that honors Jewish folklore and Jewish mythology, and tells this story of a moment when they were in danger and were able to sort of rise up and take care of themselves. And it is very strange to think about the way that it parallels what happened in Nazi Germany, and that somehow Wegener did not take any of that to heart. Right. He didn't. Obviously, he couldn't tell a story like this during Nazi occupation or whatever. But
probably would have got lined up against a wall.
Yeah, which many artists at this time were, killed or exiled, or had to flee to America. America got a lot of really great German and Jewish artists during the time of the Nazis. Like Otto Preminger, all these people who were like, I'm getting the fuck out, and I'm going to keep making the art I want to make, not under the Nazis' thumb.
And this was the time when America was like, come on over here, we like everybody.
Yeah.
More or less.
Yeah. So it's unfortunate that Wegener did not take that path. But, I am glad that this movie exists, and that it sort of like puts this Jewish story out for the people to see. Like I wasn't really familiar with the Ben Lowe story outside of this, and so I think there's probably a lot of people who this is the way that they have heard this story, and so it's good that it's out there for that purpose.
100%. I mean, at least encourages interest for people to go look into it. Like, I like mythology. Jewish mythology is some of the most interesting stuff out there. Obviously, if Jewish mythology didn't exist, Christian mythology wouldn't exist. So, you don't have Christians without Jewish people.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, all right.
I think that's about all we can say about this. Obviously, we're two non-Jews here, so we don't have the background. I'll say my girlfriend is Jewish and was going to be on this, and we had some emergency stuff come up and she wasn't able to, but maybe we'll be able to get her back at some other point to talk about her knowledge of this. I know there's at least one other Golem movie that I've got, like a more recent one. Maybe
I think there was one that came out in 2019.
Yeah, something like that. And I believe it's this same story, just kind of retold, but I may be wrong. I've not seen it. But not having the full expertise of living in the culture or whatever. I've definitely done a lot of research in the past couple of weeks about this, and it's very fascinating. But I think that's probably about all we can offer as far as this Jewish folklore. Yeah,
absolutely. All right. Well, Anthony, I mean, we're starting off a new year, but let's do it after seeing a couple good movies. Let's go to our old friend Tubi so that we can check out, another new thing, a baby, if you will, a baby Frankenstein.
Yeah, this is another one I've not seen, and it looks like it's going to be pretty trashy, but I thought Baby New Year's a thing. That seems like the time.
Baby New Year, Baby Frankenstein, it all makes sense.
Yeah. I think we actually, usually when we get around the holidays, we may take a holiday break ourselves, but we usually manage to try to not have you all notice the break. We double up and stuff like that. But this particular holiday season is pretty wild. So I think we actually may take next week off. There may not be a new episode in the feed. We appreciate your all's, I think we've gone a long time without ever missing a week, but we're going to take a week off. And then when we come back, we'll come back with what is hopefully a fun episode, if not maybe not about a great film. Maybe we'll be surprised.
At least fun.
Yeah. But yeah, I hope you all are enjoying your holidays, and taking some time for yourselves, and hope that you understand that we need to take a little time for ourselves as well, and we'll come back with rested and rejuvenated and ready to talk about baby Frankenstein.
Yeah. All right, where can they find us, Anthony?
Yeah, so you can find us on all the socials at the Frankencast, including TikTok. You can also find us over on YouTube. We're starting to kind of experiment with like putting up video of the episodes. It's a work in progress, so be patient with us on that. But if you'd like to see us talking about the movies, I think you're going to be able to do that a little more often over there. You can also email us at thefrankencast@gmail.com if you've got anything you want to talk about, or you can find us over at patreon.com/thefrankencast, where we have a second episode every week about something a little more off the beaten path than what we talk about here on the main feed. So we'd love to have you over there. Wherever you want to try to support us, you can find us. So we'd love to see you wherever works for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, check us out there. We have a lot of fun. It's wild stuff. All right, anything else we got to say?
I think that's it.
All right, well, thank you once again, and to be continued.
Looks like you've survived another episode. The Frankencast is a production of FCR Media. It's hosted by Anthony Bowman and Eric Velasquez. Follow us on Twitter at The Frankencast, or send us a letter at thefrankencast@gmail.com. Our cover art is by Amanda Keller. You can find her at Keller Illustrations on Instagram. Our theme music is by Vivek Abhishek. Thanks for listening.